Well, now that was one really long gospel reading. And the gospel tonight comes out of the 5th chapter of Matthew. Full text is verse 17 to 37. Now, what I found unusual about this gospel text is that absolutely every verse, from 17th verse to 37th verse, it had great homily material. Typically, when a priest looks at the gospel for the following Sunday to try to develop a homily, he says to himself, often, I have no idea what this gospel is saying. I have no idea what to talk about. But that particular gospel, every verse had great homily material. Now, what we're not going to do is talk about every verse. So you can sit back and relax. But as I traveled through those verses, it's when I got to the last verse, I said to myself, despite everything here is worthy to have it developed, I thought that last verse, verse 37, was absolutely meaningful. It's the verse we should hear, it's the verse that we should listen to, and then a verse that we should live. Let's take a look at verse 37, 5th chapter of Matthew. There it is. Now, in the entire gospel reading, it starts off by saying, Jesus said to his disciples. So this whole gospel is a monologue. Jesus Christ is giving incredible instruction to his disciples. And this is one of the instructions he gives when he finishes this incredible discourse. He says this, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Psychologists say that in human development of relationships, parent to child, friend to friend, sibling to sibling. And this weekend we celebrate World Marriage Sunday. So spouse to spouse, if you want your relationships to grow and develop, you always have to make sure you live in verse 37. So that when you say yes, it means yes. When you say no, it means no. Because anything less than that, a person you're trying to have a relationship with, they have no idea where you're coming from. If your yes doesn't mean yes, your no doesn't mean no. That means you lose integrity. And when you lose integrity, then your relationship begins to fall apart. You know, this friend of mine, he's a good buddy of mine. I told him we're going to be talking about this evening. And I remember he and the gal he was going with eventually became his first wife. They literally waited until I was ordained in order to get married. Now, I thought that was a very kind thing to do. Because he was my buddy, and they said, we're not going to get married until you get ordained. And here I discovered actually what they were doing is he was buying time. He told this gal how much of a friendship we had and that he wants to marry her really bad, but I got to wait till Kenny gets ordained, and she bought it. And that was kind of the tragic beginning of the relationship. I remember visiting him. They had a son, and then they had a daughter. And I'm visiting there one evening, and the little daughter's about 3 years old, and the mother's trying to put her to sleep, and she won't go to sleep, and she keeps saying, I can hear from her bedroom upstairs, no, I got to kiss Daddy. So she let the little daughter go down to kiss her father. We're in the kitchen talking. I could hear her running down the steps. She runs into the kitchen. She runs to her dad, jumps on her lap, and she gives him this incredible hug. And then she gives him this incredible kiss. And then after she gave him a hug and a kiss, she took off, ran upstairs, and fell asleep in seconds. And after she did that, and when she left the room, he looked at me and he said to me, Kenny, too bad priests can't get married. And I looked at him, and as a young priest, and I said to myself, actually tonight, I agree with you. Because that was one of the most painful things I experienced as a priest up to that point. When his daughter has her hands around his neck and she's giving him this kiss, I could feel her hands vicariously around my neck. And I'm looking at that saying to myself, oh, that has got to feel, that has got to feel so good. He must feel so complete, so loved with those hands around his neck. Now, let's fast forward 30 years later. I kept in contact with my buddy over the years, and about a year ago I went to visit him because he's in a very dark place. And when I got to his house, I knew all his history and all his story. His third marriage was in a process of just ending. The son that he had with his very first wife, about 15 years ago, died of a drug overdose. The little daughter that she ran downstairs to grab his neck and give him this hug and give him this kiss, he hadn't seen her in 15 years. The last he heard about her is she was literally a prostitute somewhere in the southern states. He heard Kansas City, but he's not sure. And as we're talking about all the exploits and the struggles and just the pain of his life, he looked at me and he said, "Kenny, you should be glad the priest can't get married." Now, I didn't say anything to him, but when I heard that, I said to myself, I needed to hear that 30 years ago. Because 30 years prior, when you said to me, "Too bad priests can't get married," too bad they can't, and I was watching your daughter hug you, that was painful. 30 years later, he's making it sound like it was such a great honor and reward, and actually, in many ways, it is, because it's a vocation, the priesthood. So I decided to have this conversation with him. I said, "Well, let's talk. We've been friends a long time, but I have to ask you this question. Getting divorced and married and divorced and married and divorced and married, sometimes when a person marries 3, 4, 5 times, that's not really that unusual or strange. Because sometimes you never take the time to assess, what am I doing wrong? How am I sabotaging this relationship?" Well, it takes 2 in a marriage to work. But every couple, the husband and wife, they play a role in the marriage. And sometimes we sabotage relationships. We sabotage relationships sibling to sibling. We sabotage relationship friend to friend. If you say to yourself, "I can't figure out why I can't hold on to friends, why I don't have many friends," there's going to be a reason for that. And you think it's because it's the other person's fault. It might have something to do with them, but probably going to have a lot more to do with you. You need to assess yourself and say to yourself, what do I do wrong? How do I sabotage relationships? Because I don't have any. So I said to my buddy, "Look, you're on your 3rd marriage. It's over. And if you don't take the time to try to figure out what you're doing to sabotage relationships, I guarantee you right now tonight, you're going to get married a 4th time and it's going to end, and a 5th time and it's going to end." So what are you doing? What are you doing wrong? So we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked. It was one of those nights that just went on into the wee hours of the morning, but he was just talking and crying and talking and crying, and finally he spewed it out. He told me what he has always done wrong in every relationship with his 3 wives and then with most of his friends. And then it came out, as I said in the beginning, the very reason why he told his first wife he could not marry her until I was ordained. Because actually what he was doing was lying. He was buying time. He was hoping she would leave him and get disgusted just being engaged, and then he wouldn't have to marry her at all. What he said to me, and this is why I said to myself, I want to work on verse 37, 5th chapter of Matthew, because he said to me that I've never told the truth to any one of my wives. And he said to me often when my wife would ask me a question, I would only tell her yes or get her off her my back. I never meant the yes. But I knew that's what she wanted to hear. I knew that's what I had to say in order to get her off of my back, so I would just tell her yes. But it was a hollow, shallow yes. I never meant it. So I never fulfilled the suggestion of the yes. I never followed through with anything. And often my wife would ask me a question, and many times I'd say no, but I never meant it. And I said, well, what kind of questions would she ask you that you would say no? He said, well, he said, I have this propensity to stop off at taverns, and every so often my wife would say to me, you're not going out drinking tonight, are you? And I would say, no. When I knew that after she would go to bed, I was going out drinking. So my no never meant anything. She knew that she couldn't trust what I said. She couldn't trust my yes, she couldn't trust my no. And when I read today's gospel reading, I said that World Marriage Sunday, we celebrate tonight and celebrate hopefully for all married couples into the future. But this is so powerful for our relationships with people. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no, so that you can develop integrity in your relationships. Because if your spouse can't trust your yes and can't trust your no, if your friend can't trust your yes and can't trust your no, or anyone you're trying to develop a relationship with, those relationships will crumble. because you lose integrity, because you're not trustworthy, because they know they can't rely on you, especially in marriage. You want to rely on your spouse. If you had to say to yourself, I can't rely on my spouse because he or she only tells me what I want to hear, and it's meaningless. Psychologists say that in human personal relationships, parent to child, spouse to spouse, friend to friend, family member to family member, verse 37, 5th chapter of Matthew, that is so, so important. If you can't live that, and you find yourself with lacking friends and have no relationships, is because you're not living verse 37. I'll close with that, and hopefully you hear it, and you make it a part of your life, and you live it, because this is very important when it comes to human personal development of relationships. It's a simple little line. Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no.